creativity in general, just doing what you want is so important.
Well, it came from a very visceral place, which is unusual for me. I didn't overthink it.
So as a person and as an artist and creator, I know that I'm addicted to validation. I believe this is a battle that all artists and people face.
That is something that I'm still wrestling with to this day. I mean, social media definitely doesn't help.
I wonder how you think about it, how much of how you move through the world and how much of your creative work itself is informed by searching for that pat on the back.
One of the coolest things about what I'm experiencing right now, as far as people responding to the songs I wrote and what I decided to do, is that it really is me.
Frank Ocean speaks on MTV in 2011.
So when people say they with it, it's like they with me, and that feels cool. No matter what the they think I should make, I'll always make what I want to make, and what I feel is the tightest.
I know that a lot of people struggle with this clambering for validation, whether they admit it to themselves or not. Most of the real damage or wasted energy that comes from this need for validation is actually done deep down in people. So deep that maybe they don't even see it. So deep that they think that the desire to look a certain way or make a certain kind of style of work is actually coming from themselves. So deep that they've forgotten what it might feel like to live without the constraints and without the pain that all this willful blindness is causing.
Brandon Novak speaks on the Soft White Underbelly video series.
In between all these treatment centers and incarcerations and birthdays, I'm in and out of treatment. And I would come into these establishments and I would loiter with the intent to recover, right? Focus only on saving my face.
In this video, I'm proposing that the ability to work and produce creatively without searching for that pat on the back is kind of the final boss of any creative's journey.
I believed that social acceptability equaled personal recovery. So as long as the home was big enough, the accounts were high enough, the woman was pretty enough, the car was new enough, I had to be doing well because by society's standards, look, he seems to has a grasp on this thing called reality.
And we don't just have to defeat this thing once or twice. Because of how deeply this stuff lies within us, we're going to have to be aware of those decisions that we make to get the pat on the back. And we're going to have to defeat that impetus to make those kinds of decisions, stay aware and try and transcend into spaces of higher truth, more honesty, and just more free expression every time we approach our work.
Sometimes you write stuff just to try and make sense of it for yourself.
Yeah, completely.
And it was like there was this knot of stuff on my chest and I was like, I needed to try and work out what I thought of it.
Riz Ahmed speaks on the Distraction Pieces podcast.
What can I do?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do I really think? Well, I think it's kind of actually like this. And I was almost just thinking it through as I was writing it. But the weird thing is that after I wrote it, I thought, I can't ever perform this. I just remember just thinking, oh, look, that's just for yourself. Don't ever show that to anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I think there's a lot of self-doubt in, at least I have experienced a lot of self-doubt, whether it was should I apply to drama school until that person emailed me, or, should I put out Sour Times until people, mates that I trust say it's good. It's a weird thing, and it's something that it's weird because I think that desire to be validated or encouraged or get that pat on the back on some level, as creative people, as performers, we're all seeking that round of applause, basically. Yeah. But the thing is, if you go into your art, if you go into a scene trying to get a round of applause, if you go into the recording booth trying to write sick bars as opposed to just doing what the scene demands or listening to the beat, then actually you'll fail. So I think it's a weird kind of paradox that I don't know, at least I'm trying to become more aware of, is that the same thing that drives me to want to be a performer is also probably kryptonite to a good performance.
So I've got a new rule for myself when I'm reviewing my work, whether it's a full piece or even down to the sentence level. And that's that I'm never asking anymore, is this good or not? And I'm simply asking, is this true? Now, before I explain this rule and we jump into this whole video, I wanted to tell you about what's going on here. In these videos, you're now going to see some clips from interviews that I've actually had with members of this community, artists from this community, who I've discussed the kinds of challenges that I talk about in my videos directly with them and, you know, in terms of their journeys. The clips are going to be peppered throughout these videos, basically addressing an issue that I have with some of the work on the channel, which is that I just want more voices and more diverse voices and more journeys, more stories from independent artists and artists who kind of represent the community of people who are watching these videos in this work. With that being said then, there's no sponsor on this video today, and I'm bringing you this piece sponsored by my own newsletter that runs alongside Creative Minds, the Inside Creative Minds newsletter. Over there, completely for free, you'll have access to the full-length interviews that I'm doing with artists from this community. And also, just to be clear, I don't send out any spam on that newsletter, and it's literally just keeping people up to date with my most recent writings, along with these full-length interviews with the artists who are members of this community. All the community artists featured today have sent me links to their work, and those links are provided for you in the description below alongside their name. If one or many of these interview snippets piques your interest, I encourage you to go and check those artists out, and as I say, take a look also at the newsletter links, which are alongside those artists' names too, where you'll find the full-length interviews to enjoy at your leisure completely for free. With that said then, I'm going to jump back into the video now.
It was a dog that was bred to turn meat that was cooking on the fire, and it used to go, the dog used to go up into a little hamster wheel on the wall and just turn the meat, and the dog was bred to have the discipline to turn the meat all day long but not eat it. I find that tragic.
Blinboy speaks about validation and mental health on his podcast.
Humans have bred a dog to ignore its basic instinct of eating a big tasty lump of meat, and instead the dog is happy to just run around in a hamster wheel for approval, to get pats on the head. I'm haunted by that because it speaks to the human condition. Humans will deny their authentic self and live unfulfilling lives to instead chase the approval of other people or society, and I lose myself in the truth of that.
So I heard this podcast the other day, which I'd really recommend around this topic, and I'm going to link in the description below. And in the podcast, the guy was talking about how the search for validation isn't a search for any real and actually satisfying form of meaning from the things we do. Instead, it's a search for a more superficial form of reassurance.
Conditional positive regard leads to conditional positive self-regard. I want mammy and daddy to tell me that I'm good, and mammy and daddy want me to go into finance and to get a good leaving cert, so I'm going to do that because I am chasing their approval. I fucking got a good leaving cert, I've a good job, I've got savings, I go on holidays, I've got a good car, I have it all. All of the conditions of worth, I've done it, I have it, here it is. Why am I empty?
This sentiment around reassurance really resonates with a lot of the writing on this that I've been doing myself. See, that sense of approval that we can wrap around ourselves is kind of like putting on a heavy jacket, and by putting that jacket on, we allow ourselves to move through the world without facing the more ecstatic and also desperate realities of the human experience. The jacket can make us feel safe, but just as Kendrick asks us, we need to consider what's really beneath all these jackets when we take them off.
Community artist Stephen discusses the importance of being humble and returning to the love of the process.
Do you struggle at all when you take your creative work out of your bedroom and stand next to it or discuss it with someone? What's that journey like for you? And if that's a useful question at all, like, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. It can be a little weird and nerve-wracking, especially when, you live with something it's kind of like a diary entry sometimes. I wonder if videos feel the same for you or music feels the same for you. But sometimes it feels like a personal diary entry and you're putting it on display for random people, or like I have friends who are really, or family who are really proud of me. Like, yeah, this is really great. Let's show this person. And it could be like, I'm at this moment, I'm nobody. So it could be a bit strange of like, yeah, I do this thing and I think it's pretty dope. But you kind of have to return to that feeling of like, man, at the end of the day, if this person doesn't like it, that's okay, because I love it. And I kind of like, as much as it's a diary entry, it's also like this thing I do for fun and feels good.
When we think about these jackets that we put on of other people's approval in order to move through the world, in order to reassure ourselves, it's interesting to ask, where did this all start? Where did the need for this all come from? The feeling of being damaged or not enough in some way, lack of safety, feeling like you need to impress others around you as an adult, because as a child, that was how you gathered safety, that was how you got things in this world. These insecurities or old habits follow us into our adult experience and colour our thought patterns, all the way from how we dress to decisions we make around divisive things like food, and obviously the way we produce work, which we're then going to hold up and say, this represents something of myself. That work that we stand next to and hold up is either going to smell of the truth and honesty and free expression, or it's going to really stink of that need, those thought patterns that we've developed around that need for approval and validation from others.
Point, right? The point is, I'm an artist, I've made a film. Now, how tethered am I to the result of that film? So am I in it for the journey, or am I in it for the result or the destination?
Director Guy Ritchie speaks on the Nerdist podcast.
It's only you that's chasing you.
Right.
And what is it that you're ultimately chasing? Is the affirmation of others.
Well, and you're also, I feel like you're running away from your past, and you're running towards something in the future that may not even be clearly defined, just something that you feel like is going to fill whatever hole was created when you were probably 13 or 14 years old.
So we're back to the crutches again.
Right.
There has been, up to this point, absolutely nothing negative about my entire experience of making this film. So how can I lose?
Right.
Now, God forbid, the film doesn't make much money, and, one thing leads to another. It also spirals down in the wrong direction. But how does that affect me? It doesn't, ultimately. It doesn't affect me. Because, okay, I may not, make another movie, I may not get much money, but you know what? I'm still going to survive.
Right.
However, the other sense of me is going, I'm not sure if I want to be seen as diminished in this equation.
Sure.
And I can feel the weakness in that.
With enough approval, the smaller self whispers in your ear, you're going to be safe, and you're going to be able to avoid the realities of the human experience and persist in that willfully blind state where you ignore the honest truth of your experience and the most free things that you may wish to express. Now, I'm 36 now myself, and I don't know who you are really or where you are on your journey, but I'm really getting bored of listening to this smaller self whisper in my ear about ideas around, this importance of approval. I'm really getting bored of it, and I've been recognizing more and more how, as I say, it colours my relationships and colours my work. And I'm starting to wonder the question that I think is actually a useful one. Almost every time we approach the place where we're going to engage in that creative process, which is to ask ourselves, what does this look like if we don't search for any validation from others? What does this look like if, when we engage in this creative practice, we don't allow those voices or opinions of others, we don't allow that into our practice? So we stop asking ourselves, is this good? Or even worse, is this good enough, I guess? And instead, we start asking ourselves that more interesting question of, is this honest? Is this real?
Community artist Jeremy discusses how we can use creativity to reprogram our deep-seated mental patterns.
I'm kind of a poster child for complex trauma. So
Okay.
People may have also seen that as CPTSD. So it's kind of a variation of post-traumatic stress disorder that typically has a childhood onset. I'm also a mental health counselor, which is why this stuff is, I can talk at length about some of this stuff. The relationship I think that creativity for me has to mental health is just that a lot of what mental health is about, it's developing new ways for seeing our own experience, right? It's like what the brain does naturally is to kind of create these pathways. It's water and like a path of least resistance, right? If it's rolling downhill, it's going to carve kind of a channel, and it's going to continue to return to that channel over and over and over again. So our brains sort of function in the same way. And so to start to see yourself differently, to start to see your experiences differently and perceive things maybe in a more healthy way, it takes a lot of creativity. You've got to be able to allow for novel experiences, for novel ways of interpreting things.
What I'm arguing in this video is if you make your art or creative work the place where you are able to accept and hold the realities of yourself and your life and break through the subsequent need for validation and be, more real, then that's the place that you're actually going to find growth and start to realize more originality in your work and, do that thing that is kind of at the heart of all teaching of creative practice, really, in many different forms of art, writing, whatever it is. If you go into those institutions that are trying to teach this creative practice, then you're going to struggle to avoid this idea of finding your true voice. You have to find your voice, and defeating that need for validation, or at least being aware of it in the decisions that we make around our work, is really going to set us on that journey to do that thing, to find our more real creative voice.
I saw Action Bronson towards the end of last year, and it was at a small venue. And I think speaking to going to shows indoors, so great because we moved through the people to get to the front. And man, the stage presence that he has, just the show and the persona becomes so much bigger than life while you're there. If you know Action Bronson, you know he's a clown. And absolutely, and so he's shaking people's hands and then pausing and being dramatic. He's like an actor, basically. So, yeah.
So how can we help ourselves transcend this need for validation in our work? Some artists might turn to philosophy or meditation or self-imposed suffering or drugs. Sometimes sadness itself can hand to us its own form of nihilism as we create in a space where we feel like we're free because we have nothing to lose. But I guess what we're trying to reach, and maybe I should just talk about myself. I guess what I'm trying to reach is a state where I don't have to engage in those more negative experiences in order to actually access that place where I can transcend my need for that pat on the back around when I make my work or present my work to others. What I guess we need to do here is mature beyond and perhaps heal those parts of us that are constantly searching for the approval from others because they don't feel safe, or they need some kind of, they're insecure perhaps. The way we move through the world, it can be informed so much by that consistent repetition inside of us that's just going, am I okay in this moment? Am I okay in this moment? Am I okay in this moment? This is that perhaps subconscious voice inside of us that's constantly opening up WhatsApp to, 100 times a day to check, are we okay? Or those compulsive exercises around social media, or perhaps, we could even get into stuff like weighing ourselves, all those compulsive things that are born out of not actually serving a more healed version of ourselves, but instead consistently asking that question, am I good enough? Am I okay?
Community artist Tanner discusses the journey to build internal validation and become self-sustaining, apart from the need for approval.
The idea that I'm working on is kind of the final boss of realizing certain creative parts of your creative journey is being able to kind of move away from needing validation around your work, and the freedom you can have when you don't need the validation, but the amount we are just addicted to the validation. How's that work for you? It's not really a question, but does that, have you got any thoughts around that?
That is something that I'm still wrestling with to this day. That's something that I probably always will be wrestling with. Yeah. I mean, social media definitely doesn't help. I feel like it contributes to the problem. But I find that being in my own space, at the end of the day, I can push past the need for validation, and I can kind of ignore it and just do what I need to do. Of course, when it comes to sharing it, that's when all of that just kind of comes up again. But real world experience for me has definitely helped me move past that some. Having people kind of reflect back to me, hey, this is good, like this is really good stuff. It's helped build the confidence, and that's starting to become self-sustaining. But the battle for the need for validation and the desire to just do whatever I want, that is still going on within my own mind at the moment.
That's a good term though, self-sustaining. I like that idea. That's exactly what I'm trying to get at, I think. How can we build our internal voices, around our work strong enough so that we can be completely free, we can take them into any environment, and we can, we can be self-sustaining. We don't need the pat on the back. We feel good, so that's interesting. If we don't work to be aware and transcend this am I okay paradigm in terms of how we live our lives, then we can end up inventing whole careers, whole lives based on this need for validation and approval from others. You don't have to look too far in this world to see examples of people that build huge castles of power and influence because as a child they didn't perhaps get the hugs that they needed to, and as an adult they're not able to stop and reflect on that pain and try and heal it. Instead they're continuously driven along these journeys of searching for higher and higher forms of approval from the world and from others. This search for control and recognition might serve the immediate efficiencies of being a business builder or a politician, but in absolute certainty, if you make that deal that you're going to live along those lines of searching for validation and approval, it's not going to serve you making the most powerful and connected artistic or creative work.
Community artist Ma Hum reminds us of the need to be resilient and harness our self-sustaining confidence in order to find practical opportunities in the art world.
So you said that you kind of were able to find opportunities by reaching out to people. Can you talk a little bit more about that process? Because that's something that some people find quite natural to do. Some people sit there and go, I don't know how to connect. I don't know how to get my work out there.
Like, people are very busy, especially people in like the art field or like the creative field. They're typically, like, I think to make ends meet, they're also stretching themselves thin. So like I think there was one guy that I was really, really interested in talking to. He was interested, but like it was hard to get a hold of him. You have to chase people down. And I think that's also awkward because you're not used to it. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a bother. But I think fundamentally it's like, you do have to be on their mind. You have to keep pinging them, be like, hey, are you still interested to have a coffee chat or something like that? And I think there's a lot to learn from other artists and people, especially who are like, have aged in the field and like they have a lot of wisdom to bring to newer and emerging artists, and they can support newer and emerging artists as well. So yeah, I mean, shoot your shot.
The privilege that we have as people who make creative work or as artists are that through our work and our process of making it, we're constantly drawn back to the reality of this possible need for validation and how much it can limit us. When we want to step up and present our work to an audience, for example, but the nerves around doing that feel too much, we feel too vulnerable. When we write a sentence that we know is true or draw something that we know is true, but end up crossing it out because there's a question in our head around how other people might perceive us for this. The art is the way you can see the need for validation and how much it affects you. It's the vehicle by which you can define and learn to transcend it, not only in the work itself, but across the other areas of your life too.
Community artist Maya reminds us that working with our hands can often be a gateway to transcend the overthinking and doubting self.
Because you said that like it connects, a lot of your practice is connected by just that, the way you kind of work with your hands kind of thing. For me, when I'm going through emotional stuff or when I connect with my emotions is often when I'm playing an instrument like a guitar, piano. So I don't have to like apply words or anything like that. It's like I can just sit there and it's like a physical thing.
I don't want to sound cheesy, but it's kind of like alchemy. It's like I can turn all of this pent up energy I'm feeling, and I could start off with nothing. Like I could start off with boards of wood or, like with resin, it'll just be plastic in a bottle and you have this beautiful mold, and it's just easier for me to like process things in that way. I guess like focus on how to transform something. Like I really find beauty in that.
Past validation, we can find the transcendence that we need in our work, the real differentiation that comes from being sure of our own voice and an ability to step through the barriers of perfectionism and how we present and stand next to our work into a place of something far more powerful and interesting. At least that's the hope, but maybe I'm speaking a little bit too high-minded here. How has that search for approval, do you think, limited or affected your own creative practice? And have you been able to battle against this in your journey and get to a place where maybe you sit in a more powerful state in terms of your need for approval from others? Is there anything in this video that you disagree with in terms of the things that I've said? And is there any conversation that comes into your mind around, taking these ideas further? if you have any thoughts on that, please do engage in the conversation below, where I hope, and in some recent videos, there have been some really interesting discussions being had between the people who watch this stuff in those comments. And with all that said then, please do consider coming over and checking out the free newsletter, which again is linked in the description below, and I'm going to link in the top comment there, where I'm trying to have these conversations with artists from this community, real independent artists who are, dealing with this stuff just as I am. And yeah, doing this work, trying to build this out in this more grounded way is a real journey for myself, and it's a key part of the way I see Creative Minds going. And by joining that newsletter and supporting it if you can, don't need to support it, but if you can, supporting it with the price of the coffee per month through the Patreon or through the newsletter directly, however you engage with those other forms of Creative Minds, you're voting to say that, yeah, you think this work's interesting, allowing me to kind of push forward with it and increasing my ability to do so. Thanks as always to anyone who just watches the videos and anyone else basically along on the journey here. Thanks to the paid community who are supporting these videos already. It matters hugely, and you're supporting the work for everyone else who gets value from it here. And yeah, with all that said, there's another video on the screen linked to the issues that I've discussed in this piece if you want to watch some more. And yeah, peace, good luck in your own work. See you soon.